They dug your grave so carelessly, never realizing it would become the foundation of your empire. My dear chosen ones, let's talk straight. This isn't just a story of betrayal, it's a story of exposure. The ones who tried to tear you down thought they were burying you under shame, but they were really burying themselves. And now, they're suffocating under the weight of their own choices, choking on the very lies they spun to trap you. You see, when you are chosen, set apart not by luck, but by resilience, vision, and strength, betrayal doesn't end you. It sharpens you. It takes what was fragile in you and forges it into something they can no longer reach. That's the truth they never calculated. They thought your silence was surrender, your isolation was weakness, and your setbacks were proof they'd won. But chosen ones, hasn't life already shown you? Every time they counted you out, you came back louder without even speaking. Let's break this down. Why do they hate you so much? Why go so low to try to destroy you? It's simple. You remind them of everything they could have been if they weren't so busy pretending. You didn't just survive storms, you built ships out of the wreckage. They didn't want you to drown, they needed you to drown. Because your survival shatters their excuses. Your rise exposes their stagnation. So they set the traps, whispered the rumors, played both sides of loyalty. They thought if they couldn't climb higher, they'd drag you lower. But here's the irony. Every hand that tried to pull you down just proved you were already above them. Chosen ones, understand this. Being targeted isn't a curse. It's confirmation. No one plots against the irrelevant. No one wastes energy trying to destroy someone they don't secretly fear. The knives in your back weren't accidents. They were acknowledgements. Proof that your very presence was too heavy for their fragile pride to carry. Think about that. They saw you, and instead of clapping for your growth, they tried to cut your roots. But roots don't die in darkness. They deepen, they expand. And when the time is right, they break through the soil with a force no hand can hold back. Let me put it in perspective. They built group chats without you, thinking exclusion would erase you. They laughed behind closed doors, believing mockery would shrink you. They set fires in your absence, certain the smoke would cloud your name. But smoke fades, fire burns out, and the only thing left standing is you, scarred maybe, but unshaken. Ask yourself, who really lost? The ones who lost their peace chasing your downfall, or the chosen one who gained wings while they were busy burning bridges? The power of being chosen is this. You don't just rise, you rise in a way that forces silence. The same mouths that shouted against you now stumble when your name comes up. The same hands that pointed at your flaws now tremble with regret. The stage they built to humiliate you became the spotlight that revealed them. And that's why they're beyond ashamed now. Because every move they made told on themselves. They fell so low trying to destroy you that they can't climb back up without tripping over their own guilt. And here's the part they'll never admit. Your existence is their reminder. Every win you achieve, every smile you wear, every silent stride forward, it's a mirror they can't escape. They thought they were building your coffin, but really they were building their own reflection. And that reflection is unbearable. That's why they hide, why they whisper, why they can't look you in the eye. Because chosen ones, you didn't just survive their schemes, you became living proof of their failure. So let them sit in their shame. Let them wrestle with the truth they tried to bury. Because you, chosen one, were never the victim of their betrayal. You were the revelation of their weakness. And now, as you keep moving forward, remember this. Their lowest acts became the highest proof of your calling. And nothing is more humiliating to them than realizing the destruction they planned for you became the blueprint of your rise. And to every one of you, my dear chosen ones, thank you for being here. Whether you've just found this space or you've been walking this journey with us from the start, your presence is proof of the power you carry. If you're ready to rise higher while they sink into the shame of their own downfall, tap tap that like button, hit subscribe, and drop the number 77 in the comments so I know you feel this message in your bones. Show your support with a super thanks if you want this voice to keep speaking for every chosen one out there. Because this video, chosen ones, now they're beyond ashamed for how low they fell to destroy you, is more than just words. It's a mirror of your story, a reflection of everything they tried and failed to break in you. And now, let's dive into it step by step. Believe me, if you're truly chosen, you'll feel it deep down. The signs, the shifts, the proof that only chosen ones can recognize. Ordinary people don't carry this weight, and they don't get these lessons. But you do. Let's get started. Number 1. Silence wasn't weakness. It was the strategy that shook them. They mistook your silence for surrender, not knowing it was the sound of your evolution. They thought your silence was emptiness, never realizing it was the echo of their own irrelevance. My dear chosen ones, let's be clear. Your silence was never weakness. It was never defeat. It was never confusion. But that's exactly what they convinced themselves to believe. Why? Because it was easier for them to imagine you broken than to accept the truth. You were outgrowing them. You were leaving behind their noise, their pettiness, their small games, and stepping into a frequency they could never reach. That's the part that eats at them. They couldn't accept that your quiet was a weapon, that every moment you didn't respond was a reminder that they no longer mattered. Ask yourself this: why do manipulators panic when you stop talking back? Why do they get restless when your energy no longer bends to their chaos? It's simple. People who rely on control need reactions to feel powerful. The moment you went silent, you cut their fuel supply. You didn't just confuse them, you exposed them. They had built their identity on the idea that they could pull your strings. But when you chose to disconnect, when you chose to let silence speak, they realized they had no strings to pull anymore. That's why they hated. That's why they scramble in the shadows, whispering in corners, haunted by the fact that your evolution no longer includes them. Chosen ones, remember this: silence is not empty, it is strategy, it is recalibration. While they were gossiping, you were growing. While they were plotting, you were preparing. While they were playing games in the dark, you were designing a life that doesn't even require their presence. They thought your stillness was surrender, but it was construction. You weren't ignoring them. You had simply recognized that they were no longer worth addressing, and nothing wounds a fake loyalist more than being dismissed with disinterest. Think of it like this: when they burned the bridge, they expected you to drown. But silence was your wings. You flew above the flames while they sat choking on their own smoke. They don't understand that not every victory needs an announcement. Sometimes the loudest clapback is progress they can't stop and success they can't sabotage. You didn't need to shout because your transformation shouted for you. You didn't need revenge because your growth became the revenge they can't escape. And here's the real sting: they will never meet this version of you again. The silence they mocked was the cocoon. Now that you've broken through, they're stuck replaying the memory of a person they'll never have access to. That's the punishment they never expected. Not your anger, not your words, but your absence. And absence, chosen ones, is a louder truth than any confrontation could ever be. So wear your silence like armor, because while they mistook it for weakness, you knew it was strength. They thought you were buried, but you were becoming. They thought you were finished, but you were only beginning. And now the version of you that walks forward is untouchable, undeniable, and unforgettable. That's why they're ashamed, because they realize the silence they laughed at became the very storm that erased them. Number 2. Betrayal didn't just break trust. It bankrupted their soul's credit line. They didn't just betray you, they bankrupted their integrity beyond repair. Every lie they told on your name wasn't a strike against you. It was a loan taken out against their own future, and now the debt collectors are at their door. My dear chosen ones, betrayal is never just about you. It's about them. When they set traps behind your back, when they twisted your kindness into ammunition, they thought the cost would be yours to pay. But betrayal always comes with a bill, and the betrayer always pays double. One cost is immediate: the loss of you, the collapse of trust, the exposure of who they really are. But the second cost is far heavier. It's silent, it's long-term. It's the erosion of their own peace, their own credibility, their own sense of self. And that debt doesn't just disappear, it compounds with interest. Chosen ones, integrity is the real currency in this life, and they spent it recklessly. They swiped loyalty like a stolen credit card, spent honesty like loose change, and gambled away sincerity for the cheap thrill of ego and attention. But the thing about that kind of spending is this: once it's gone, it's gone. You can't buy back credibility with apologies. You can't rebuild character with excuses. You can't refill an empty account with words that no longer mean anything. And now they sit restless at night, replaying every dirty move, every whispered lie, every scheme they thought would bury you. Their conscience won't let them sleep. Their mind won't give them peace. They traded your trust for claps from people who wouldn't even stand beside them today. They thought they gained power, but what they really gained was a curse. The permanent knowledge that they had to sell out their own integrity just to take a shot at you. You see, chosen ones, betrayal doesn't just end relationships. It corrodes the betrayer from the inside out. Even when they pretend it's over, it lingers. It shows up in the cracks of their new friendships, in the silence that swallows them when the crowd goes home, in the hollowness they can't mask no matter how loud they laugh. They can't escape it, because the shame follows them everywhere. And that's why they're beyond ashamed now, not just because they lost you, but because they lost themselves trying to destroy you. You walked away stronger, elevated, untouchable. They're left bankrupt, no credibility, no peace, no foundation. That's the cost of coming against a chosen one, and it's a debt they'll spend the rest of their lives paying. Number 3. They mocked your struggles, not realizing they were laughing at their own future. They laughed at your struggle, not knowing they were writing the script of their own collapse. They mocked your scars, blind to the fact that every scar was a signature of strength they could never imitate. My dear chosen ones, let me remind you of this undeniable truth. When they laughed at your pain, they weren't laughing at weakness. They were laughing at their own reflection, a future they couldn't see yet, but one that was waiting for them. Every smirk, every whispered joke, every time they called you dramatic or too sensitive, it wasn't proof of your fragility. It was proof of their fear. Because chosen ones, people mock what they don't understand, and they despise what they secretly envy. Think about it. Why did they feel so bold laughing at your lowest? Because they thought life was a scoreboard. They thought while you were stumbling, the game was over. They believed your tears, your silence, your isolation was a finish line. But they couldn't have been more wrong. What they were witnessing wasn't the end. It was construction in progress. While they were entertained by your pain, you were becoming unshakable. While they ridiculed your solitude, you were building a foundation that no betrayal could ever crack. And now, the irony burns them. The same struggles they mocked are the ones they're drowning in today. They used to laugh at your anxiety. Now they're the ones searching for ways to quiet their restless minds. They used to dismiss your isolation. Now they sit surrounded by people who would trade them away for attention in seconds. They used to call you weak. Now they can't stomach the strength it took for you to survive battles they couldn't last a single round in. Chosen ones, this is the essence of your power. What they thought would break you made you fertile. Every ounce of dirt they threw only fed your roots. Every lie, every plot, every whispered insult, it didn't bury you, it planted you. And when you rose so tall that even their shame couldn't look you in the eye. That's why they avoid your gaze now. Not because you wounded them, but because they wounded themselves trying to break someone who was never built to break. They thought your downfall would be their entertainment. Instead, your comeback became their exposure. The torch they lit to burn you didn't consume you. It spotlighted them. And what the world saw wasn't your weakness. It was their cruelty. The masks slipped. The contradictions piled up, and suddenly everyone could see the truth. Chosen ones, you didn't have to fight back, you just had to keep walking. Because while they laughed at your struggle, they were really laughing at the blueprint of their own downfall. And now they live with the embarrassment of realizing the joke was always on them. Number 4. Every shovel of dirt became the soil that made you unstoppable. They buried you like a secret, but you rose as a forest. They can't escape. They thought the dirt would suffocate you, but it became the soil that fed your uprising. My dear chosen ones, hear this clearly. Their greatest mistake wasn't trying to bury you. It was not realizing what happens when you bury a seed. They believed silence would suffocate you, that dismissing you would erase you, that isolating you would starve you. But chosen ones are built differently. The darkness they shoved you into wasn't your grave, it was your greenhouse. Every ounce of dirt they threw became the very substance that grew your roots stronger, deeper, and untouchable. What they mistook for your ending was actually your positioning. They didn't bury you, they planted you. And here's the truth they can't face. You were never a fragile flower they could trample. You were a forest waiting for the right season. While they mocked your struggle, laughed at your silence, and whispered about your downfall, something powerful was happening beneath the surface. Roots, solid, sprawling, unbreakable roots. You were becoming grounded in ways their shallow spirits could never comprehend. The soil they thought would smother you became the foundation of your expansion. And now, chosen ones, every breath you take reminds them of what they failed to destroy. Think about the irony. While they celebrated your supposed burial, you were multiplying underground. While they thought you were gone, you were evolving into something they could never contain. Your healing made you taller, your pain made you deeper, your resilience made you wider. And now, here you stand, not just recovered, but expanded, towering in the very spaces they swore you'd never occupy. They tried to erase you, but now they live surrounded by your presence. They're gasping for air in a world oxygenated by the very existence they tried to erase. The forest you've become overshadows them. Your quiet endurance outlasts their noise. And the greatest humiliation for them is this: you don't even have to prove them wrong anymore. You simply exist in undeniable glory, and that alone suffocates them. So let them wrestle with the forest they can't cut down, the roots they can't dig out, the resilience they can't comprehend. They wanted you gone, but now they're trapped in the shadow of what you've become. You were the seed they buried in darkness. Now you're the forest too vast to ignore, and they're choking on the life you've created. Number 5. The stage they built for your defeat turned into their own exposure. They tried to script your downfall, but ended up performing their own exposure. The stage they built to humiliate you became the spotlight that unmasked them. My dear chosen ones, let's talk about the theater they tried to run. They thought they were producers, directors, and stars of a play where your downfall would be the finale. They rehearsed their lines of lies, practiced their whispers, and sharpened their fake smiles, all while imagining an audience clapping at your collapse. But here's the twist they never prepared for. The spotlight doesn't always obey the script. When the curtain rose, it didn't highlight your flaws. It illuminated their schemes. Think about it. They were so obsessed with making you look weak that they forgot their own masks were made of paper. And under the heat of exposure, paper always burns. Every rumor they spread, every staged betrayal, every false narrative was nothing more than a mirror turned back on themselves. They weren't revealing who you were, they were confessing who they were: jealous, bitter, insecure, and worst of all, obvious. Chosen ones, understand this. You didn't need to clap back. You didn't need to break character or throw punches. The truth had patience, and patience always wins. While they screamed to be heard, you stayed grounded, and that quiet presence carried more power than all their noise combined. They wanted you broken on stage, but instead the world saw them tripping over their own performance. No edits, no filters, just raw disgrace under the lights. And now, they're left with the kind of shame you can't wash off. Because it's one thing to fail in secret, but it's another to fail publicly in the very spotlight you turned on someone else. They built a platform for your destruction, but ended up handing the audience front row seats to their own downfall. That's the irony. They didn't destroy you. They destroyed the illusion they lived behind. So let them sit in the ruins of the play they wrote. Let them wrestle with the embarrassment of knowing that the show they created revealed everything they swore they'd keep hidden. Because you, chosen one, walked off that stage untouched, elevated, and more undeniable than ever. And that, right there, is why they're beyond ashamed. Because the script they wrote for your ending became the story of their exposure. Number 6. They wanted the crown, but not the scars that forged it. They wanted your shine, but skipped your storms, forgetting that light is only born through fire. My dear chosen ones, listen closely. What they envied was never just your presence. It was the power you carry, the respect you command, the way rooms shift when you walk in. They wanted the glow without the grind, the crown without the cracks, the influence without the inner battles. They craved the product, but they rejected the process. And now, that's why they're beyond ashamed. Because they realize the mask they wore is crumbling under pressure, while your authenticity stands unshaken. Here's what they never understood. You didn't stumble into strength. You were broken into it. Every scar carved depth into your character. Every betrayal shaped your resilience. Every silent night where you rebuilt yourself in pieces was fuel for the empire you now stand on. They thought power was something you could imitate, like an outfit you throw on. But chosen ones, you don't just wear power, you become it. And becoming is a bloody, grinding process that counterfeiters can't survive. So they mimicked, they copied your style, your language, even your confidence. But here's the truth. Imitation without foundation is fragile. It's a house built on sand, collapsing the moment real storms roll in. That's why their version of you is breaking now. It doesn't have roots. It doesn't have scars. It doesn't have the unshakable core that only pain and persistence can forge. They thought the applause made you powerful, but what made you powerful was standing strong when no one was clapping. Chosen ones, this is why your energy hits different. Because you carry substance, not decoration. Your power isn't performance, it's survival, and that's the difference they can't fake. Deep down, they know they skipped the fire. They know they avoided the weight of rebuilding. They know the shine they borrowed can't withstand heat. And that shame eats them alive, because they realized the very crown they reached for was never meant to sit on their head. Now their image cracks while your essence expands. They wanted the crown, but they didn't want the crushing. They wanted the throne, but not the trials. And now the truth stands taller than their pretense. Power cannot be faked, borrowed, or stolen. It can only be earned. And you, chosen one, paid the price in full. That's why they're drowning in shame while you stand untouchable. Number 7. You treated loyalty as sacred. They treated it as disposable rent. They treated loyalty like a lease, never realizing you wrote it in stone. They thought loyalty was temporary. You showed them it was the very currency that held their world together. My dear chosen ones, let's cut straight through. They treated loyalty like it came with an expiration date. To them, it was a short-term rental, something they could use when convenient, then walk away from when it stopped feeding their ego. They wore loyalty like a costume, easy to put on in public, just as easy to rip off when no one was watching. But you weren't built that way. For you, loyalty wasn't a contract to be signed and cancelled at will. It was your character, carved deep into who you are. You defended them when they weren't in the room, you stood beside them when it wasn't easy, and you gave a kind of loyalty that most people today don't even know how to spell. And what did they do with it? They gambled it away. They confused your loyalty with blindness. They assumed your patience meant you would tolerate anything: shady jokes, backhanded comments, small betrayals dressed as slip-ups. They thought your loyalty had no limits. But chosen ones, here's the truth: loyalty without reciprocity is just exploitation, and you weren't born to be exploited. The day they crossed that invisible line, you didn't just step back, you took your value with you. And now, look at them, surrounded by empty echoes, fake friends, alliances that look good for the photos but collapse the moment real life demands substance. They don't just miss you, they miss the weight you carried. They miss the glue that held their fragile circle together. Because without you, there's no depth, no foundation, no fire that keeps them accountable. What they're left with is noise, loud, shallow, meaningless noise. Chosen ones, understand this. You weren't asking for perfection. You weren't asking for worship. All you ever asked for was reciprocity, the same loyalty you poured out so naturally. And when they couldn't meet you halfway, you didn't beg, you simply walked. Not from spite, but from self-respect. That's why they're ashamed now. They lost more than your presence. They lost access to realness, protection, and authenticity that can't be duplicated. So let them sit in circles that feel full but say nothing. Let them wonder why the energy has shifted. The truth is simple. Loyalty isn't rented, it's earned. And when they treated it like a lease, they lost the chosen one who treated it like a lifetime bond. Number 8, they tried to clone your greatness, only to learn. You're the blueprint they can't copy. My dear chosen ones, listen closely, because this truth is going to hit you right in the core. The very people who tried to destroy you weren't just threatened by your presence. They were threatened by your pattern. They didn't just envy your success, they envied the essence that created it. They wanted your glow, your influence, your energy, the way life bends itself into alignment whenever you show up. They studied you like a syllabus. They mimicked your tone, your moves, your ideas, even your mannerisms, all while hoping no one would notice where they got their inspiration. But here's where the shame hits them hardest. You're not a trend. They can't download your spirit. They can copy the surface, but they can't replicate the source. You are the blueprint, the original, the design created from battles they've never survived. And now, every time they try to imitate you, they expose the one truth they wanted to hide. They will never be you. Chosen ones, understand something powerful. People don't try to clone what they don't secretly worship. Imitation is not flattery in your story, it's confession. A confession that your greatness is so undeniable that even your enemies try to wear your skin like armor. But the tragedy for them, the humiliation they can't escape, is that greatness isn't cosmetic. It's not something you paste on, it's something you're forged into. And forgings require fire, a fire they've never stepped into. Let's speak plainly. They tried to duplicate the shine without surviving the storm. They wanted the crown but skipped the crushing. They tried to adopt your confidence without earning your scars. And that is where their downfall began. Because chosen ones aren't formed by admiration, they're formed by adversity. You didn't become who you are because you wanted the spotlight. You became who you are because darkness tried to swallow you whole, and you refused to disappear. Your greatness came from pressure, not performance. And that's what makes you impossible to copy. Think about the steps of your journey. Did you not rise through wounds they never saw? Did you not fight battles in silence while they were busy performing for crowds? Every moment you were rebuilding in private, they were polishing their image in public. They thought you both stood on the same ground, but you were the foundation and they were the facade. They were painting walls while you were pouring concrete. That's why everything they built collapses under the weight of real storms, while you remain unshaken. Here's the part that pierces them. They thought copying your style would give them your strength. They thought mirroring your confidence would give them your credibility. They tried to mimic your lane while secretly praying no one would see the weakness behind their imitation. But the universe is not fooled. Energy is not fooled. People are not fooled. And now the shame has settled into their bones because every attempt to become you has only highlighted how far away from you they truly are. Chosen ones, understand this. The blueprint can never be overshadowed by the copy. You're not just difficult to imitate, you're impossible to recreate. Why? Because your greatness isn't external, it's internal, it's spiritual, it's coded into your purpose. They can copy your vocabulary, but they can't copy your vision. They can mimic your actions, but they cannot mimic your anointing. They can study your behavior, but they will never inherit your destiny. And destiny is where their imitation dies. And that's exactly why they're beyond ashamed now. Not because they failed to become you, but because in trying, they exposed what they lack. They exposed their emptiness. They exposed their insecurity. They exposed the cracks in the persona they'd been selling to everyone around them. They thought wearing your greatness would elevate them, but instead, it revealed their hollowness. Let's talk deeper. When a chosen one rises, it triggers something in people. Admiration in some, awakening in a few, but insecurity in many. Those who refuse to grow will try to steal instead. They don't want to build their own identity. They want to borrow yours. They don't want to face their own reflection. They want to live behind yours. But the universe is strict with identity theft. The cost is public embarrassment. And that's what they're experiencing now. Because every time they attempt to step into your posture, they trip over their own shallowness. Every time they use your words, they sound hollow. Every time they mimic your energy, they drain themselves dry. They forgot that your presence is powerful because it's yours. Chosen ones, this is why you walk differently. This is why your path cannot be replicated. Because while they want the outcome, you survived the origin. While they want the crown, you endured the breaking. While they want the glow, you sat through the nights that nearly destroyed you. And now the universe honors the authenticity of your journey while exposing the counterfeit in theirs. Their shame is heavy now, heavier than the lies they told, heavier than the pretending they performed, heavier than the ego they protected, because they finally realize something they tried to deny. You're not who you are because people like you. You're who you are because life tried to crush you and failed, and that's something they cannot copy. So let them keep trying. Let them keep imitating your footsteps without ever stepping into your fire. Let them keep molding themselves into a cheap reflection of the person they once underestimated. Because every attempt only proves what you've known all along. You are the original. You are the blueprint. You are the design the universe wrote in ink while theirs was scribbled in pencil. And chosen ones, hear this truth deeply. There is nothing more humiliating to your enemies than realizing they fell so low trying to destroy you, only to end up chasing the shadow of the person they failed to break. You are uncopyable. You are unrepeatable. You are undeniable. And that's why they're beyond ashamed. Number 9, your healing didn't just free you, it exposed the damage. They pretended didn't exist. Your healing didn't just free you, it exposed the damage they pretended didn't exist. My dear chosen ones, let's get something straight right now. Your healing wasn't a quiet, private process. It wasn't something you did in the shadows just to move on. Your healing was a revelation, a mirror, a spotlight. And the moment you started rising, the moment you began reclaiming your breath, your peace, your identity, every bruise they left on your soul started glowing like neon signs they could no longer hide from. They wanted to break you silently, but your healing made their destruction visible. That's why they're ashamed now. Not because you healed, but because your healing exposed them. Chosen ones, understand this. When you heal, you don't just close wounds. You reveal their fingerprints. You reveal the patterns. You reveal the truth behind every lie they told about who you were and who they claimed to be. They worked overtime to make you look unstable, emotional, overreactive, dramatic. They tried to paint you as the problem so they could walk away clean. But healing clears the fog. It sharpens your vision, and suddenly everyone sees what was always there. It was never you. It was them. Every step you took away from chaos became a step toward clarity. Every boundary you set uncovered a piece of truth they tried to bury. Every moment you chose peace over their manipulation exposed just how toxic the environment was that they forced you to breathe in. Your healing wasn't just your victory, it was their exposure. And that's what they fear the most, because as long as you were hurting, they could pretend they were righteous. As long as you were broken, they could pretend they were blameless. As long as you were trying to survive, they could pretend they had nothing to do with your struggle. But the second you healed, the second you walked out of that fire untouched, the lies they built started collapsing like a house made of glass. Chosen ones, your healing is the loudest confession they never wanted to make. Think about it. When you were wounded, they mocked your pain. When you cried, they called you dramatic. When you confronted them, they called you insecure. When you questioned their intentions, they called you paranoid. But now, your peace is undeniable. Your glow is unmistakable. Your transformation is impossible to deny. And that transformation shines a light directly on the damage they caused, the damage they swore didn't exist. Your healing exposes the truth they thought they buried. Because healing doesn't erase the past, it exposes it by contrast. Your strength shows how weak their intentions were. Your clarity shows how foggy their manipulation was. Your elevation shows how low their actions truly were. Your confidence shows how deeply they tried to break you. That contradiction alone humiliates them. And the most powerful part? You didn't have to call them out. You didn't have to drag their name. You didn't have to expose them publicly. All you had to do was get better. All you had to do was rise. All you had to do was heal. And the moment you healed, the truth stood up on its own. Your growth told the story for you. Chosen ones, that's why they avoid you now. That's why they watch you in silence. That's why they feel uncomfortable in rooms where your name comes up. Because your existence is a reminder that healing exposes what harm tries to hide. They can't defend their actions anymore. They can't hide behind excuses anymore. They can't pretend anymore, not when you're walking proof that they were the storm disguised as shelter. And what eats them alive the most is this. Your healing made it obvious that you never deserved the pain they put you through. You were never weak. You were never unstable. You were never too much. You were simply surrounded by people who didn't know how to care for a soul as rare as yours. People who used your loyalty while mocking your vulnerability. People who blamed you for wounds they created. But now your healing makes the truth undeniable. Your peace highlights their chaos. Your maturity highlights their immaturity. Your accountability highlights their avoidance. Your evolution highlights their stagnation. Your joy highlights their bitterness. Your freedom highlights the prison they built for themselves. And nothing humiliates a betrayer more than realizing the wounds they tried to hide are now reflected back at them through the strength of the person they tried to destroy. Chosen ones, your healing didn't just free you, it convicted them. It reminded them of everything they did that they hoped would stay buried. It forced them to face the mirror they've been running from. It stripped their excuses. It erased their illusions. It exposed their patterns. It made their mask slip too far down to ever pick up again. Because healing is truth. Healing is revelation. Healing is exposure. Healing is justice. Healing is divine repayment without you lifting a single finger. And here's the part they never expected. You didn't heal to spite them. You didn't heal to prove anything. You healed because you had no choice. You healed because your soul demanded expansion. You healed because you were chosen. And chosen ones don't stay broken. They break patterns. They break cycles. They break generational curses. They break silence. They break free. Your healing was never for revenge, but it became the greatest revenge anyway. And now they sit in their shame, realizing the damage they denied was real, deep, and undeniably caused by them. They realize the pain they mocked was the pain they inflicted. They realize the wounds they ignored were the wounds they created. And they realize your healing didn't just set you free, it put every lie they told on display. So walk proudly, chosen one, heal loudly, grow boldly, shine unapologetically. Because every step you take forward is a reminder of how far beneath you they fell trying to destroy you. And that shame, they'll feel it forever. Number 10. They saw the power in you before you ever did, and that's why they went to war. My dear chosen ones, let's get this truth straight. They didn't attack you because you were weak. They didn't go to war with you because you were fragile. They didn't try to destroy you because you were insignificant. No, your enemies, your betrayers, the ones who fell so low trying to tear you apart, they came for you because they sensed a power inside you that you had not even recognized in yourself. Before you saw your own strength, they felt it. Before you understood your own calling, they feared it. And before you could step into your destiny, they tried to stop you from ever reaching it. This is the irony that haunts them now. They went to war against a version of you that hadn't even awakened yet. They tried to sabotage a seed before it had sprouted, forgetting that chosen ones don't need permission to grow. They saw the promise in you, your potential, your light, your influence, and instead of being inspired, they panicked. They were terrified of who you would become because deep down they knew they could never rise to stand beside you. Chosen ones understand this. Power is felt long before it is seen, and your enemies felt that power vibrating off you even when you were still stumbling, still healing, still doubting yourself. They picked up on something in you that you didn't yet know how to name. Your quiet confidence, your depth, your intuition, your resilience, your ability to rise after every storm, your spirit that refused to break even when life bent you in every direction. They noticed it, and instead of stepping back, they prepared for battle. They feared your future so much that they tried to rewrite your present. They tried to dim you before you discovered how bright you could shine. They tried to shatter you so you'd never discover your strength. They tried to distract you, confuse you, isolate you, anything to prevent you from realizing who you truly were. They weren't fighting the person you were at the moment. They were fighting the person they knew you were becoming. They were fighting your destiny. And this is why their shame is so heavy now, because all their efforts, all their plotting, all their lies, none of it worked. They went to war with a chosen one. And no matter how low they stooped, no matter how dirty they played, no matter how vicious their attacks, they couldn't stop what was already written for you. While they wasted their energy trying to destroy you, you were quietly rising into the exact version of yourself they feared the most. Think about that. They recognized your greatness while you were still questioning your worth. They saw your potential while you were still healing from wounds no one else knew about. They felt threatened by a light you hadn't even learned to turn on fully. They fell into jealousy over a future you hadn't even stepped into yet. And now that you've begun to awaken to your power, now that you've begun to move differently, think differently, and see differently, they're drowning in a shame they can't escape. Chosen ones, let me make this clear. They didn't underestimate you. You underestimated you. They saw your calling before you did. They sensed your purpose before you embraced it. They witnessed your strength before you had the courage to claim it. And because they couldn't rise with you, they decided to come against you. They chose war because peace with you meant admitting that they would always live in your shadow. And that's the part that breaks them today. Not that they lost you, not that their schemes failed, not that their lies were exposed. What truly tears them apart is realizing that they went to war with someone who wasn't even fighting back, someone who was still discovering their worth, their path, their identity. And now that you've grown, now that you've stepped into the fullness of your power, they can't even look at you without being reminded of their own weakness. Your very existence is their exposure. Your confidence is their regret. Your resilience is their humiliation. Your success is their confession, because every step you take forward shines a light on how unnecessary, how cruel, how desperate their war truly was. They didn't fight you to win. They fought you to prevent you from becoming. And now that you've become exactly what they feared, their shame is unbearable. They can't explain why they hated you. They can't justify why they targeted you. They can't defend the lengths they went to. All they can do is sit in the realization that they declared war against someone who was never their enemy, but who was always destined to outgrow them. Chosen ones, listen closely. The war they waged against you was the clearest proof of your significance. People don't fight those they consider beneath them. People don't try to destroy what they do not fear. People don't strategize against what they do not envy. And every attack was a confirmation of who you were, long before you could see it yourself. And now that you walk in the fullness of that truth, they are beyond ashamed. Ashamed of their pettiness, ashamed of their jealousy, ashamed of how low they fell trying to stop a destiny that was never theirs to control. The war they waged only revealed their insecurity, while your survival revealed your purpose. So hold your head high, chosen one. You were powerful even before you believed it. And the fact that they saw that power before you did is exactly why they tried to destroy you. Their war was your validation. Their shame is your confirmation. Their downfall is your proof. You were chosen long before they tried to break you, and that's why they failed. And now, chosen ones, you've seen the truth laid bare. They fell so low trying to destroy you that their own shame became louder than their schemes. But your rise proves what they feared all along. You can't bury what was built to grow. This is your reminder to keep walking in that power unapologetically. If this message hit you, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and drop the number 77 in the comments so I know you're claiming your chosen path. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, because we rise stronger together.